Welcome to the In My Opinion Show with Ronald Bay Robinson and friends, seen on the internet 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can also view the In My Opinion Show on Flint Comcast Cable Channel 17 every Saturday at 6 and every Wednesday at 8:30. You can also view the In My Opinion Show 7 days a week on Detroit Comcast Cable Channel 68, 7 days a week. I want to welcome my very learned co-host, Mrs. Denise Smith-Allen.
Hi, Ron.
And Mrs. Jackie Williams.
Hi, Ron.
Welcome all to the In My Opinion Show. Let's talk about the African American mythology. 10 great myths of African history dismantled. What America does not want its citizens to know about its history. Is ancient America nothing more than the missing pages of black history? Perhaps so. New documented insights are being brought forward by Dr. David Inatup, PhD, former nutritionist of Muhammad Ali, and author of The First Americans Were Africans. Documented evidence. He is quickly changing the ancient imagined faces of America and replacing them with astounding myth-busting evidence of who the first Americans really were. On the eve of Black History Month, we thought it fitting to recalibrate black history not as a tragic side note of American history, but the very foundation of America and its rise as a global power. Here are 10 well-assumed American myths dismantled by this profound research. The first Americans were Indians. Okay. This is the one everyone knows to be true, right? Dr. David's book gives detailed evidence about this fact. He says there are tens thousands of years of African travels to the Americas before the Indians arrived. Columbus discovered America. This is a very old argument that most people have given up on. Columbus's journey were noteworthy for a number of reasons, but discovery should not be attached to any of them. Whites were the first to conduct international trade. This is very hard for most modern Americans to imagine international trade without white Americans involved, but it existed for thousands of years before they were in existence. The pier and harbor at Bimini, Bahamas, substantiates this. The mound builders were Native Americans. Some American mounds are clearly the work of master builders. They were not Indians. This is one fact that the Smithsonian does not advertise. Vikings discovered America. We already destroyed this one, but to make it clear, the first European people in America were not the first to discover it. They were among the last to discover the New World behind the Africans and the Asians. Pilgrims were the first farmers in America. Was it not the Native Americans who saved the Pilgrims from starving their first winter with crops they grew? White people built the first roads and canals in America. Roads and canals were built by Africans far before Europeans came. Some can still be seen in southwestern USA. The first Eskimos were Asians. Oh, come on, doctor. We've got to be kidding. You've got to be kidding me. Is what you are probably thinking about this one, right? The answer, 2 words. Documented evidence. Documentation trumps conversation. And the evidence clearly shows the original Eskimos really were not from Asia. The first black Americans were brought to America during the slave trade in the Americas. This is a standard and tragic myth because it turns out that the ancestors of many of the people brought here during slavery were already well established in the travels of America for tens of thousands of years. European white people were the first iron makers in the Americas. When it comes to European Americans, in American history, we love to give credit where it just isn't due. Africans were the first iron makers in the Americas in early Europe, many years before white folks ever arrived. My question is, why do Europeans always change history and proven facts to make themselves look better than anybody else, knowing full well they haven't discovered shit? These claims are easily substantiated with evidence in every case. In short, the doctor has laid out the blueprint for correcting American history, and every American should be willing to learn about their first founding fathers. This is the foundation of the America we know and love, and everybody should be proud of our collective American heritage. It's also a part of what makes us great. So this Black History Month, we should also celebrate the contributions of the great African American founders who made it possible for others to walk in their shadows even while they were being written out of history. In short, we should celebrate Black history every day, because without Black history, there's really no American history. It's really that simple. Before we get into the debate, I would encourage everybody, if you haven't went to see the movie Lee Daniels, The Butler, please go so. Please do so. And also, 12 Years a Slave. Those are excellent movies. In reference to what I was talking about, Denise, what's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Ron, you've covered a variety of topics as it relates to Black history, Black pioneers, people who have made contributions. So that's kind of an overview of a lot of different topics, but I think for the purpose of our discussion, it may be helpful for us to kind of narrow the focus and talk about some specific things that we want to, put, bust the balloon, so to speak, about the myth. So if you want to talk about something more specific, I think that would be helpful, at least for me.
Okay. Where should I begin in terms of specificity?
Well, I think if you go back to maybe that first mention of the American Indians. Okay, and specifically talking about were they here first, as it relates to whether Africans were here first or whether Indians were here first. Okay, so we have to look at it from a historical perspective and say, okay, the origin of mankind, as we know it, was the center of civilization was in Africa. And Africans were here millions of years, and they traveled, and they went extensively throughout various parts of the world. Okay, so it would stand to reason before things were actually recognized that we had a presence here. Okay, so how do we establish that? Well, research did that. Okay, but the point is that America has a Eurocentric view, and so they're not going to expound on our being here as saying, okay, this is like an equal opportunity, everybody had a chance to come through, and we're going to recognize that. Certain people are not going to get the recognition. And so we know that when we went to school, I know all of us, went through the elementary school process, and it was an indoctrination about Eurocentric perspective about our history here in America. So I'm just throwing that out there just to talk about, the beginning from the standpoint of Africans' presence in America. We were here, but we weren't recognized for that.
Exactly, and it still goes on today. In the schools that our children go to, they don't teach true history, whether it be Black history, Native American history, or what have you. You know what I mean? It's all about, in my opinion, white folks,
right?
White privilege. All right. And I've asked a number of school board presidents and so forth, okay? Why is it not, why don't you teach the true facts as it pertains to different races of people? Oh, we can't, we can't do that. You know what I mean? We have guidelines from the state of Michigan, and it's all, it's all done. It's all, it's almost set in stone.
Well, the curriculum.
You know what I mean?
The curriculum
Yeah.
is established. There's an established curriculum, and as
See.
I was saying earlier, it's a Eurocentric perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, when you think about education in the 60s and 70s, you know, particularly like on college campuses, students had to fight to get diversity. They had to fight to get Afro-American history in the college setting. And this was because we know that in elementary, junior high school, and high school, there were books that were already prepared that just did not recognize the contributions of other Americans. Okay?
Exactly.
And so knowing that and having that information, people fought to try to increase that knowledge. Well, now the buzzword is diversity. Okay? So we are not seeing the push that was done back in the 60s and 70s about our education. See, it comes from my perspective, in my opinion, it comes from parents having some information, some knowledge about, you know, what's missing. If you had an opportunity to look in your children's history books, for example, and you see what's missing, and you say, oh, you know, why is this? And so then it's incumbent upon the parent or those people in the community who are concerned to go to the school board. One or two people can't do it.
Right.
It has to be a groundswell. It has to be folks saying, you know, there's something missing, and we need to have the whole story taught. And so in order to have that done, the pressure has to be put on school officials, administrators to do that. Because they're not going to do it because, again, the curriculum is coming from the top.
Right.
Okay, but it's the parents here and the community that says, we're not accepting this curriculum because it's slanted. It doesn't have everybody included. But that's up to us, you know. So we have to take some responsibility for that.
When I was in high school, we had history. We had U.S. history, and our parents did push. And what we did was they offered a special class. It was called Black History. But just like you said, it was still not accepted as history. So it was a separate class called Black History, and it was not even part of the real core curriculum. It was like an elective. You could take it if you wanted to take it. But they offered it because we were complaining because there was nobody in the history books that looked like us. So we complained. But then when I went away to college, and I went to Alabama State University, and I lived the Black history, I didn't realize how much I missed when I was reading the books in history. So that's what our kids are missing, that Black experience, because they're not teaching that. They're teaching the nice story, George Washington, but they're not teaching about the slave that was in the back taking care of George Washington and how he would have made it where he made it without us, taking care of his children and doing the things that we did for him.
Right.
You know, when I was in high school, actually not high school, but even through grade school, you know, I went to a predominantly all whites because that's where my family wound up, you know, and we were around white folks, Europeans, you know what I mean? And on my first trip to Detroit, where all them black folks come from? You know what I mean? I was just amazed. All right. Although, you know, my parents are, you know, were African American. Well, at that time they were Negro. All right. Then black, now African Americans. You know. And I remember asking my mother, you know, again, where'd all them black folks come from? All right.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting, and I think that this is our reality because we all come from various perspectives and from where we grew up and how we grew up. And, you know, with me, I grew up in New York, and I went to a public school. And I am very grateful that the school that I went to in elementary school, some of the images that I saw, particularly in our library, were black images, black folks. They showed us, you know, I can recall there was a woman her name was Constance Baker Motley, and she was a judge, okay? And so one of the things that really touched me was, number one, she had 3 names, and so I thought whenever I got married, I was going to have 3 names. And then the other thing was she was a woman of color who had aspired to do what she was doing. And so there were images that were put in front of us that helped us to begin to inculcate that information and say, you know, this is doable. This is something that we can achieve. And then there was Shirley Chisholm. Okay, she was another person that like I said, and this is elementary school. And this is why I really credit those educators, because back then, of course, you know, there were people who were not interested in sharing that information. But the school that I went to was predominantly black. And so those educators, white and black, took the time to make sure that we had relevant information. And then a library opened up outside of the school system, the Langston Hughes Library. So at that particular time, then I could walk 3 or 4 blocks and go down to that library, and I spent hours listening to Malcolm X speeches and different people like that. And so it just helped to formulate a consciousness, you know, and that was one of the things that I really appreciated about where my environment, you know. And so coming to Michigan, and, you know, I've lived in Philly, so seeing what is lacking so much in our perspective about who we are. If we don't get it when we're younger and have a good grasp of what is going on with our humanity as individuals and as black Americans, then it's very hard for people to recognize their power. And they don't get it, and then they do all kinds of craziness. And that's why we got, you know, young folks running around here with guns, killing up each other, because they don't know who they are.
Exactly.
They don't know.
Exactly.
You know? So, sad.
Yeah, that's a real good example. And the images that they're looking at is not really black, powerful images. Those are negative images. And those are not what our ancestors fought for.
Absolutely.
That's not what they died for. Not at all.
It's crazy.
When I think about our history, and I think about, number one, every black person that I see in America, I look at the fact that we are a part of a heritage of those who chose to survive. Chose to survive, okay? Because our ancestors managed to make the trip and get here, okay? Because the voyage was approximately 3 months. And during that time, there was no good food, no good sanitation, none of that. A lot of our ancestors was thrown overboard because the cargo got too great. You understand? So when you think about, and then to look at the hulls of the ships and how we were put in there like sardines and all of that, and to think, once we hit these shores, the inhumane treatment that we had on top of the inhumane treatment of getting here, which is called the passage or the Middle Passage, in Atlantic Ocean, there are all of our ancestors. When we go through that Atlantic Ocean, that's sacred, because that's where our ancestors, a lot of them who didn't make that trip, are at the bottom of the sea if they didn't get eaten up by sharks. Okay? So when you think about all of those images, but when you see you, me, everybody that's walking around here, and the fact that we survived.
Yes.
We survived.
You know, and also it's estimated
It's
that
amazing.
you know, that millions of men, women, and children, you know, died on that Middle Passage, either from disease, or they jumped overboard, or they were thrown overboard. It's just, you know, it's just amazing. I have to say that, you know, I have nothing against Europeans or white people, however way you want to look at it. All right, it's just that I don't understand in the 21st century why we're still relegated, you know, to in many cases second-rate citizens. I want to bring this into the conversation too. This is about President Barack Obama. All right, why is he so hated? I'll tell you why. He's a black man, the most powerful man in the world, and millions of American, white, Europeans can't fathom that. He has received more death threats than all presidents that America has ever had. Okay, and thank God for the the Secret Service, and you know what I mean, and and his wit. He's still doing what he needs to do. All right, for all people. What's your thoughts on that?
I think he stands for all people because he is not just black. He is mixed, so he stands for all people. And what he's doing is he's erasing some boundaries that have been there in existence for years, financial boundaries. He's correcting the wrongs that have been wrong for so long. And back to what you were saying about not feeling like we are on the same level, to have that train of thought that you are better than another person, to know that he holds the highest office, and to know that he's above you in office-wise, but he doesn't act as though he's better than you because he's earned the office. It's not as though somebody gave it to him. He's an educated man. He's not just a man that somebody just gave him a job. He's an educated man. He earned his degree. He didn't just, the one gave him and he didn't get it because of who he was. He earned his degree. And he's looking out for all people that have been wrong for so long. Credit card companies that have been doing people wrong. People have been falling through the cracks of wrong, policies. And he's just looking out for everybody. But what had happened is he's knocking down those barriers that allow us to be able to get back up so that we can rise up, because there's so many hidden barriers to keep us down, and we're getting too close, and that's why he's hated, is because he's revealing so many things that nobody knew that were going on. And so why people think he's not doing anything, is so much to be done. That he is doing things, but it's so much to be done, and they're upset because he's getting rid of all of that stuff, and he's allowing us to have some fair play. Where before it wasn't a leveling field. You didn't get here. I can go to the doctor, but if you didn't go, it was no big deal. Now everybody gets to go to the doctor, and if you're a humane person, you should be glad. But you're not glad because you feel as though you're better. And you shouldn't go to the doctor because of who you are. Obama says if you're human, you should be able to go to the doctor.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And the other thing, too, as it relates to our president, two thoughts come to my mind, okay, and again, this is my opinion. I believe that President Obama was groomed for this position. There's no accident that he got the position that he has, okay? I believe that he was groomed. I believe because of his heritage, like mother from Kansas, I believe, father from Africa, African name, okay? The education that he had was a global education because he went out of the country for a period of time to be educated. He was over in Hawaii as well. He was in Chicago. So he has a real well-rounded education, and his perspective is more open as it relates to his experiences.
Sure.
Okay? Having said that, I think that ultimately, regardless to whether he is a biracial person or not, from the standpoint of how white America views biracial people, they still see them as black. Okay? All right? Period. With that, he has an extremely difficult role because he has to balance that power of the presidency with a Congress which is primarily made up of white men who are not happy in his position. And because of that, and because of the people who are on the extreme right, which is the Tea Party and that kind of thing, they are doing everything they can to create gridlock in the government, because ultimately, as the president-in-chief, commander-in-chief, he is going to be held responsible.
Sure.
So they're going to try to destroy his legacy as he leaves the office, because he was elected for a second term, so basically now he is a lame duck president. So what they're going to try to do is make him look like he was not effective or able to handle the position. So therefore, we have tried this experiment didn't work out, so we don't need to put another black person in the presidency. Okay? Again, this is my perspective. So therefore, the next time around, of course, we're ready now perhaps for a woman president, and maybe we will have others who will step forward of minority persuasion that will come through.
Exactly.
Okay? But at this point, they tried it, and because he has a temperament to be able to deal with all that negativity. How disrespected this man has been from the time he took his office up until this very day. How disrespected the office. If you don't even like the person, you don't disrespect that office like he has
Exactly.
been disrespected. But they're doing that to show. And there was an event that happened before the emancipation, or even I should say after the emancipation. There was something that happened in the law, but ultimately there was a court decision, that there was no right that a black person had that was going to be respected, and this was something
Sure.
that came down. And I just can't remember what the court.
Well, the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it was a Supreme Court decision, and I just right now it's not coming to me. But that's where that comes from. It's a mindset.
Sure.
Racism is a learned behavior. We understand that. And so it's so ingrained in this country, and it's so ingrained in the mindset of the people, that it's going to take probably another couple of generations before that stuff is eradicated. That's my opinion.
Well, you were speaking about, Congress. In the year 2013, well, and I agree with the ones that say this, that they were a do nothing Congress. All right, and they primarily made up of white males. Okay, and with all of the foolishness that that they pulled. All right, and I admire President Barack Obama. Lord have mercy, I'd like to be a fly on the wall, in some of those congressmen's offices, and and especially his living quarters. I mean, you mentioned it, and you hit the nail on the head. He's balanced, all right, and a great inner strength, and this is what you need in leadership, all right, and. I applaud him, and hopefully that he will get some other things changed, because especially him and Eric Holder, change some of those, make sure some of those southern states don't get that loophole that they're trying to get to disenfranchise African Americans and women. All right, and hopefully we'll get to that federal wage for everybody too. $10.10 an hour. But this has been a great conversation. I want to thank Jackie Williams. I want to thank Miss Denise Smith Allen. This is Ronald Berry Robinson for the In My Opinion Show. So next time, stay focused.